When we are discussing back pain, there's a few things that typically cause back pain in most individuals. It depends on if we're talking about lower back pain, mid back pain, or something else, but I'm going to cover the basics of back pain in the mid to lower back areas and discuss the things that you can do to help to prevent and to troubleshoot your back pain when you are experiencing that. The first thing we're going to cover is the reason that people typically have back pain. The most common cause I see for back pain is the tightness of the lower back, which actually is caused by two main things. The first thing is a weakness in the abdominals. So your deep core is weak, your abdominals are weak, and maybe even a little bit distended. The second cause is over tight lower back muscles because of all of this pressure that is coming out the front, and your lower back has to compensate for stabilizing the spine, because you can see how when I dump into my lower back like this, my belly comes out like this. I have seen so many people try to improve their posture by just sitting like this and standing like this. That makes back pain worse. The other thing that can cause this tightness in the low back and this weakness in the abs and make all of that worse is tightness and lack of mobility in the hips and hip flexors. And the other thing that causes back pain is actually glute weakness. The first thing we want to do is strengthen the core. You want to strengthen the deep core and make sure that all of your abdominals, all the way from the deepest layer, your transverse abdominals, which wrap all the way around here like a supporting corset of muscle underneath all these external muscles. And you want your whole core to work functionally together, which is a complex type of core training that involves all different ranges of motion, all different kinds of core training, and that makes sure that you have a strong and a functional core. The first thing you're going to want to do is tighten the abs or strengthen the abs. When I say that we want to strengthen the abs, I mean that we want to make sure that our core can hold our rib cage in alignment with our pelvis. So one of the problems with a lot of teaching on core health is that it will say chin in, shoulders back and down, squeeze the glutes, and that will get most people all the way there, but some people it won't get them there. So what you need to do is you need to actually think about having your rib cage come over your pelvis. So what you actually want to think about, rather than just thinking about just jutting your chest out and throwing your shoulders back and artificially holding that posture, is actually grab a mirror, look at yourself in the mirror, and you're going to watch and try to discern. You might need to wear a tight shirt or just a sports bra or something in order to see this well, but you're going to want to see, where is my rib cage in relation to my pelvis? So is my pelvis, like if I could imagine my pelvis as a cylinder, is my pelvis right underneath my rib cage, if I imagine my rib cage as a cylinder? And so if I do that, that means that I'm going to have to do a couple things. I am going to tuck my tailbone and push my pelvis this way by squeezing and activating my glutes, and then I'm going to bring my rib cage a little bit over my pelvis, but I'm not pushing my pelvis so far forward that now my femurs are rotated this way in the socket. So what I want to do is just gently make sure that I am putting my cylinder, my rib cage, and my cylinder, my pelvis, right over, stacked on top of one another. That is good posture, and that's the foundation for all of the other core exercises that you'll do and all the other exercises that you'll do. If you do all of your exercises, your bicep curls, your overhead presses, obviously your core workout, your squats, your everything with good core activation, everything will become a core exercise, because your core has to be activated in order to stabilize your trunk so that your limbs can move in space without affecting your spine because of all the torque that's involved in bringing a limb out or lifting weights with your limbs. So, that being said, there's several things you need to do. You need to strengthen your transverse abdominis. You need to strengthen your obliques. You need to strengthen your abdominals. You need to actually strengthen your rib cage, but the most important thing is you need to strengthen your diaphragm. So one of the most common causes of back pain, in my experience, has been diaphragm weakness. So essentially, your diaphragm is one of the most important parts of your core. So if you cannot properly activate and use your diaphragm, the rest of your core is going to be lacking in proper activation and functionality. So for example, everything that I do, I want to exhale when it's most difficult. And what happens when I exhale when it's most difficult is that I'm able to brace my spine and brace my core in a way that I can't when I'm breathing in. And the next step after that is learning how to breathe under a brace. So that would be a static strength exercise. Like a plank, you have to breathe through your brace, or any kind of holding motion where you'd have to hold something for a while, you have to learn how to breathe through that brace. But at first what you want to do is practice breathing through that movement, and when it's most difficult or on your exertion, you're going to breathe out, because that's going to activate all of these core muscles and pull everything in really tight. I'm going to use a squat as an example, and I'm going to turn this way so you can very easily see what my core is doing. So if I breathe in, so you always want to take a preliminary breath, which means you want to have your lungs full of air before you begin, otherwise this is not going to work. So you want to breathe in and exhale. Breathe in and exhale. Do you see how my core comes in really tight when I'm exhaling? That's my core working with my diaphragm to stabilize my spine so I can lift something really heavy with my spine stabilized. So I'm going to come down into a squat and breathe in on my way down, and then I'm going to exhale on my way up. So obviously there's a little bit of breathing in under the brace while I am coming down, right? So I have to breathe in, and my core still has to be steady and tight as I'm coming down, because your muscles in your core have muscles that help you expand and muscles that help you contract. So you have to use those that help you expand when you come down and those that contract as you come back up. So I'm going to breathe in, breathe out, practice breath. Breathe in, come down, exhale as I come up. Now, with a good breath, there's a few things that are really important to consider. Number one, when I breathe in, all my breath is going down. So when I say it goes down, most people think about belly breathing, which is just, which it could be really good for calming the nervous system. However, it is not a sufficient way of breathing for core and functional health, and will cause the diaphragm to be thicker in the front and weaker in the back. So what you want to do is practice what I call 360-degree breathing. So I have to breathe in, and I'm going to expand this way, okay? When I breathe in, my rib cage comes up like a bucket handle. Now, when I breathe from, if I show you from the side, you should also see some movement in my spine and in my sternum, but they're the last things to move. So I breathe in, and I have a little bit of motion in my spine and my sternum. That's more like a pump handle. Like at a well, you pump a handle in order to get the water to come up. So it looks like this, okay? So that's what I want to see. I want to see that pump handle motion at the spine and the sternum. So thing I want you to think about when you're breathing is what expands and what contracts. So when I am expanding, I want a little bit of length to come into my pelvic floor. I want my diaphragm to come down and open up so I have all of this wonderful breath in here, making room for my air in my lungs. And the last thing is that rib cage and the sternum and spine. So all of that expands. So I'm expanding 360 degrees around. At first, when you try this, you will notice that it is hard to move your rib cage, and that's totally normal. But you have to work at it in order for those muscles and the fascia and all the connective tissues and everything to gain the mobility that you're asking it for. So the next thing is you're going to want to think about what happens when you contract. So when I breathe in, everything opens up, pushes out. I'm actually using my muscles between my rib cage. I have two sets of them, some that allow me to open my rib cage and some that allow me to contract them. So I'm using all those muscles to open up my rib cage, and then I'm going to use the opposite set of muscles to contract my rib cage. And I'm going to do the same thing with the pelvic floor. So I'm going to open up the pelvic floor when I breathe in and contract the pelvic floor when I breathe out. It's really important to make sure that the pelvic floor is involved in your breathing, because if you start lifting heavy or you're only breathing through the rib cage and you're neglecting breathing and supporting through the pelvic floor, essentially your entire core is a system of pressure, and that pressure has to go somewhere. So if I am going to breathe in and I do not consider what my pelvic floor is doing, I breathe out and I leave all that pressure, I leave my pelvic floor relaxed, a lot of that pressure is going to go down into the pelvic floor and can cause pelvic floor weakness and those kinds of issues. The one exception to that would be okay if you struggle with chronic pelvic floor tightness and you have pain with intercourse, or you have difficult time putting a tampon in, something like that. That would be a great time to actually not try to contract the pelvic floor. However, it is a good idea to make sure that you have control over it. So I would practice both if you have tightness in the pelvic floor that's chronic. So essentially, there's a lot of things happening when I'm fully embracing my core when I'm doing this exercise. So I'm coming down. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm not going to actually breathe. So I'm coming down. As I'm breathing in, I'm going to expand the rib cage, pump handle at the sternum, pump handle at the spine. I am expanding through the pelvic floor. Now, when I'm going to breathe out, as I come up, I'm lifting something really heavy. I'm going to contract everything. Everything comes in and together, and you'll notice that will help stabilize your spine when you think about all of those pieces coming together to activate the spine and activate the core together. There are a few reasons why this is helpful for people who have back pain. The first is that when your rib cage loses mobility, you need to make sure that you bring mobility back into the rib cage, because the rib cage attaches to all those wonderful and very flexible spinal muscles. So you need those spinal bones, your vertebrae. So if those are connected, but your rib cage is stuck, you need to mobilize that rib cage in order to release the tension off of your spine. The other thing is, when your spine isn't able to move with your breath, then you get tightness in your spine just because it's not moving at all. And a lot of pain is simply due to lack of mobility. So I want your spine to start moving when you breathe. The third thing is, when you are breathing and you are breathing not with your diaphragm, your body will find something else to breathe with. For some people, that's muscles up here in the head, neck, and shoulders, and those people tend to have chronic tension headaches and that kind of thing. But people who do not breathe with their diaphragm can also breathe with their paraspinal muscles. So if you're breathing with your spinal muscles, that's going to put a lot of pressure and tension on those spinal muscles that aren't meant or designed to carry the pressure and the weight of your breathing, and so they get really tight. So learning how to breathe is the first step in healing your back pain issues. And also learning how to breathe through your movement is another really important part of healing your back pain. Please let me know if this was helpful. Like this video and follow along for more.